Bali is located in Indonesia and has beautiful scenery. Bali has suffered severe ecological damage in recent years, with 25% to 30% of its forest and mangrove forest gone, and 23% of its coral reef die. 9,200 square kilometers of water polluted to very degrees. Bali's ecosystem need urgent restoration. Forest ecosystems are very powerful in their ability to sequester carbon, relying mainly on the fertile emphasis of trees to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen and organic matter. In recent years, Bali's forest area has continued to decline and forest carbon sequestration has fallen by 42% in 10 years. According to the survey, the decline in carbon sequestration in Bali's forest is closely linked to extensive deforestation and forest fire. It is important to enhance carbon sequestration in forest. The first strategy is to select species according to the altitude, soil material, and solar radiation. I have researched the altitude of Bali and selected the appropriate tree species for each altitude. Next, I sorted the soil materials in Bali and chose the right species of each type of soil. A selection of tree species suitable for each part of Bali has made by combining three conditions. Finally, a partition map is formed. The second strategy is to plant different tree species at different densities. The 6 forest species selected were planted at different densities, depending on the height of the trees, the size of the canopy, etc. The third strategy is to add microalgae to the soil to increase the amount of carbon sequestration in the soil. Microalgae are suitable growing in soil with a pH of 6.5 to 7.5. Therefore, I study soil pH. After a period of addition, soil carbon sequestration increased. I chose a heavily deforested area to study, selecting the tree species and density and calculate carbon emission and sequestration capacity. In 2045, Bali will have 60% forest cover and sequester more than 100 billion tons of carbon. Boundaries between city and forest are broken down and the two are organically integrated.
What's your impression about Bali? A heavy or dangerous places? Water at Bali is challenged by cities and farming. 4 core causes cause the water pollution problem heavily, and distribution around the coastline with only 2 treatment stations. Therefore, more than 19% sewage is discharged directly into the sea. The confluence of the coastal mangrove with the main polluted river has become basis for future development. Point. The project introduced a mangrove-based water purification system. Firstly, 3 mangrove species and 9 wetland plants were selected. Secondly, 4 types of future wetlands and optimized proportion imagined. That will be a low-impact but high-efficiency project. Thirdly, plastic will be recycling for the mangrove island built, and different ponds are selected from below model and collected them as a whole system. The cycle is the basic unit of mangroves. 1 + 3 period grade can give the morphology of future mangrove purification wetlands. The project target in 2045 has been concluded as this picture shows. For the future, all size wetlands will be connected in the system and deal with the water problem together. This is for small size. There will be larger.
Traditional aquaculture causes damage to mangrove ecosystem and has a large carbon emission. 40% of Bali's disappearing mangroves by 2020 linked to traditional aquaculture. There is potential for the use of mangroves for aquaculture. Not only can mangrove farming bring a 50% increase in production, it can also reduce carbon emissions by around 85%. In regions with more trading ports, more aquaculture areas will provide more resources for trade. Mangrove aquaculture sites must be dependent on the distribution of mangroves. More people means more consumption, and transport costs are taken into consideration. The distribution of aquatic markets is also a consideration for site selection. Each aquaculture area produces enough fishery production to meet the needs of the people around it, and can also be exported for trade. Some seaweeds have a huge bioenergy potential and can be used as an energy source. In conjunction with Bali's energy infrastructure and transportation, more energy seaweed species will be grown in the areas around the infrastructure. Species selection will choose the local strengths of Bali's species. More advanced, smarter seaweed aquaculture technology not only increases seaweed production, but also promotes CO2 fixation.
This part of the plan is about the restoration of coral reefs in Bali. Bali's coral reefs have extremely high ecological diversity. However, the coral reefs in Bali have been seriously damaged in the past decade. The restoration of coral reefs is mainly to suspend the bleaching process of coral and restore its ecological elasticity. Therefore, based on the degree of bleaching and growth of coral reefs, I plan to divide Bali's reefs into 3 recovery areas with different emphases: rapid recovery areas, diversity protection area, and new coral reef area. Next, I will give an overview of the 3 areas. The first area is in Benoa Bay. This area relies on some strong coral species for rapid recovery and relies on artificial coral to maintain a relatively stable coral growth environment and promote the retrograde bleaching process. The second area is near Temucus. Rely on the complementary and collaborative functions of different species to protect coral reef biodiversity. The third area is near Balak. Rely on artificial coral reef structure to reconstruct and restore the area where coral has disappeared. We use coral structure and artificial reef repair process through 3D printing technology. We will use degradable environmental protection material PLA to reduce the damage to the environment. This material can be produced independently on the island. At the same time, I also plan to build coral reef ecotourism locally. An example is a coral restoration area bordering mangroves in Benoa Bay. I plan to build an underwater park here, which can be connected with mangrove parks on land. This project can not only bring tourists ocean scenery but also popularize knowledge. Finally, it is the imagination of the ecological diversity of coral reefs and the development of underwater tourism in the future.